This is going to be a really quick and oversimplified explanation of what glazing is. The glazing we've been talking about that was especially pioneered by Jan van Eyck. Jan van Eyck probably didn't invent it, but he developed it certainly and advanced it really dramatically, and so was a big influence that painters looked to when it came to this kind of painting. So he's working in oil paints, and oil paints take to glazing really, really well, and you can create some very strong colors. So this Brunei painting that I did a long time ago has already had some color glazed over part of it, and glazing works by using transparent and translucent paint over the top of a Brunei or a Grisaille painting. And this color is called this layer is called the dead layer. This is the layer that has really no color, only value. And so if you use transparent glazes over the top of this, the values and the details will still come through to a great extent. So I'm going to just really quickly demonstrate in a couple of ways. So first I'm going to glaze. I'm just using some clear painting medium here. This is liquid. Pick up a little bit of red. In this liquid. So that's a transparent color. And I've already got yellow as an underlayer, a layer of glazing that's dried here on the apple. So if I come back with the red and glaze a layer over the top of the yellow, what I get is a more yellowish red. And because you have two different layers of color interacting, you're going to get more sort of variety in the kind of color that comes through. And you'll have more depth to the color because there's literally more depth to the paint. The light penetrates through each layer and then reflects back at you with varieties of color that are much more interesting than if you had painted this a solid red color. You can add more in some areas, right? You could make this stronger if you'd like. You can go back with a cloth. You can take a cloth after you've glazed color on top, and while it's still wet, you can go back and clean it up. You can lift it off in lighter areas, like this, and shape it in all kinds of different ways. So glazing color on top is something that you can do layer after layer. So I could have several layers of color glazed on top until I ended up with a really intense, complex, very interesting color. And so this is using two different layers of glaze. And now, because I want to keep demonstrating in a different way, another great thing about glazing is if you really run into some problem or you are not pleased with your day's work, if you get to it quickly enough, you can simply go and wipe it all off and start over again. So there we have our yellow glaze underneath. We've got it back just like it was. I'm going to wipe that off a little bit better. A tiny bit of turpentine would really help lift it off, but you have to be careful with turpentine because it will, if you get very aggressive using it, it will start to lift off the paint of the underpainting, of the dead layer, and you don't want that. So now I'm going to mix up a little blue with the glaze. And so you'll notice now if I come back and put a thin layer of a bluish tint on top of that yellow, then I end up with a green apple. And of course, you can glaze green by itself, and then you could glaze other colors into the green to make it stronger or more complex. But I'm just using this as a way of showing you how by choosing different colors on top of one another in different layers, you can get different effects. And the same holds true here. You can go back, lift out light areas like this, or areas of variety in the color, like that. And so you can end up with a different apple just by glazing different colors on top of that yellow. But it makes a more interesting, more complex color, and it also mimics more the way that we see. Colors that we see in life are very, very rarely something simple that you would see and be able to squirt straight out of a paint tube. They are layered and complex, and a lot of the colors that we look at are a little bit translucent or transparent. And this sort of mimics the way we see with that. So I hope you will experiment a little bit with glazing. At this point in the semester, we don't really have time, but this is sort of the idea of glazing, using color in a way that's transparent, and this is called indirect painting. So the alla prima method that we're looking at, that we should be using right now, is called direct painting, because you're simply mixing the color you want, you're putting it on the canvas, and then putting a different color next to it, and everything sort of has its own color. There is no dead layer, there are no transparent layers on top of it. There's just the colors you mix on your palette. With indirect painting, using these glazing techniques, you really work out all the values, all the lights and darks, and even a lot of the details in the dead layer, in the brunei or the grisaille. And then you come back and glaze color on top that retains all those different values, but then tints the effects with color. So that's a short sort of look at glazing technique associated with Jan van Eyck that we've been studying.